Guys, what's up? So Palmer Travel 747. I am at work, and you guys know me every once in a while I do an airplane video. Then lately I've just been doing like train sim and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm actually here to talk about my experience with British Airways. And I've been meaning to do it for days now, but I am exhausted from the flying. I went home to England. I'm British, but I've lived in America for 25 years since my dad moved us here as a computer programmer. Um, and I got to go home because, well, unfortunately, my grandmother passed away. But we turned it into the best thing ever because we flew British Airways and we went to see my whole family. And I know my grandmother would have been happy about that. But let me tell you guys about my British Airways experience. So British Airways was fantastic, man. We went on an Airbus A380 from Miami to Heathrow, and I have always wanted to fly the Airbus A380. That was like the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. So basically, we got we so we take off from Miami, right? And we're all excited. So on the way over, they let us know that someone has like a peanut allergy on board, right? And guess what happens halfway through past Greenland? Somebody's peanut allergy flares up, and man, the cabin crew were on it. Man, they rushed over there. It was all hands on deck, taking control of the situation. Like, wow, those guys really cared. They had a great system for medical emergencies, and it looks like they probably now. I was far in the back and I couldn't really see, and I mean it was kind of rude to peek, but anyway, so I think they gave the person the EpiPen, and then we actually made it all the way to Heathrow without diverting because I thought, oh no, we're gonna have to divert. No, we made it to Heathrow, and ambulance met a person at the gate, and they held us all until the ambulance was on the plane with the person, and then we were able to board. I just thought they really just took care of that person real good. Obviously they got them stable enough to be able to make it to Heathrow, which, obviously the medical assistance is going to be better in England than like Iceland or something like that. Obviously, no hate towards that country. It's just, proper English is proper English. Anyway, so I had a great time in the UK. We went to my grandmother's funeral. It was lovely. We saw my uncles and my cousins and lots of hugs and smiles from everybody. It wasn't a sad thing. It was only a little bit sad when we buried my grandmother, but we really celebrated her life. We had drinks and smiled and told stories and all those wonderful things, man. But anyway, so after then, spending more time in Epping with my dad's side of the family as well, we went to back to the United States, of course. We live here in Florida, and so we flew back to Miami. So this is where it gets interesting. I've never had this happen on a flight to me before, but wow, this was crazy. This actually happened. And props to British Airways because they did everything right. All right, so I get on the plane, same Airbus A380. It's the designated route for that aircraft. So I even was in the same seat. It's kind of nice. So we're going. My wife's sitting next to me. We have this older gentleman who's sitting next to us, and he doesn't speak a bit of English. Nice guy, though. We're being nice and smiles. And so the drink cart comes around. Guess what he does? He steals like 2 or 3 bottles of wine off the cart, and the stewardess, just being a good stewardess, goes, all right, well, he doesn't want to create an issue. The guy doesn't speak English. He's going to let him have it. It's British Airways. Service. I totally understand, man. So what we didn't know is this man had a medical condition. So what ended up happening was he drinks all the bottles of wine, and what I think he has is like Alzheimer's. I have a picture of him. I'm definitely not going to post it on the internet though, because that would be absolutely disrespectful. This guy has he's too old to be flying alone. And whoever put him on that flight by himself is very irresponsible without saying something to the airline or something like that. So what ends up happening is he starts getting really touchy. And he starts grabbing me and like kissing my arm, kissing my hand, kissing me. He had to kiss me almost like 100 times up and down my arm. And I'm just trying to be as nice as possible about it. Like, he's European, don't know where he's from. It ended up that he was a Romanian. So that was the most interesting part. But anyway. So he's kissing my arm, and then he's like touching the girl who's sitting across the aisle from him, and like he's just being really grabby and touchy and just kissing everybody and just acting crazy, you know what I mean? And obviously I'm like, this man is really old and something is happening here. This isn't like a pervert type thing. It's like it's like a he's really old type thing, and he's, I don't know, something's happening, and he's had too much wine. So anyway, I end up, of course, after he was like starting to try and reach over me and grab like my wife and stuff like that, I'm like, all right, I gotta do something about this, you know, just being responsible. And so I make an excuse. I go, I gotta go to the bathroom, but I was gonna go talk to the stewardess, you know what I mean? So after having to jump over this man because he doesn't understand that I need to get up to go to the bathroom, or maybe he knew I was going to talk to the stewardess and didn't want to let me, God knows. Anyway, I really don't think that's it. I'm just messing around. I go into the back, I talk to the stewardess. I go, hey, and she already knows because every time her and her colleague would walk past, he would grab them. And he had like, you know, dinner service all over his hands, and like he ruined the flight attendant's shirt because he grabbed him with pasta all over his hand. He's just grabbing, and one of the girl flight attendants goes, no sir, no grabbing, you know, and she's a woman, she doesn't understand what's happening yet. She thinks just this weird old guy's just grabbed her inappropriately. And so like, you know, so anyway, what happens is the flight crew all comes together, you know what I mean, just like on the first flight. And the flight boss was such a caring individual. He was such a good guy. I wish I knew his name. I ended up shaking his hand. He was really good. And what he did was he's like, okay, obviously, he declares, obviously this person is old and has like Alzheimer's or something like that. And I go, yes, of course. You know what I mean? Because we're trying to just keep it together at 38,000 feet in the air, 600 miles an hour. So what he does, he's like, all right. He tries to get a Lithuanian-speaking flight attendant, and she goes, sorry, he's not Lithuanian, and I don't know what dialect that is. They ended up going into his bag, getting his passport. And in his passport, it says, I am from Romania. I do not speak English. I need assistance. Thanks, guy. Whoever did that. And he goes, okay, he's Romanian. That's where his passport's from, this, that, and the other. We ended up having him, so what ended up happening? He went to the bathroom, and it was just me and the female flight attendant. And he's been in there for a while, man. And she's like, would you mind helping me check on him? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. She's like, I'm so worried he's like falling asleep in there or something like that, because he's had like 3 bottles of wine at this point, and he was consistently asking for more wine. And of course they had cut him off responsibly, but in a nice way, this, that, and the other, but he was not having it. But the other thing is, you know, he sat there and just didn't watch anything on the screen or nothing. He just looked around the whole 9-hour flight. This poor man was so out of it, like, and someone had just stuck him on this aircraft. Anyway, so what ends up happening is they asked a gentleman to switch seats with him who had a space between him and another seat. And we put him in the back by the galley. After I'd helped, you know, make sure, get him out the bathroom and stuff. He was all right. He was just taking forever, you know, and they really appreciated that. And, you know, I was just doing everything I could to help because I felt bad for this guy. You know, like I said, he wasn't a pervert. He's just old and senile and God knows, you know what I mean? And so we all get him to this seat. We sit him down. And the rest of the flight, the man is just looking around the cabin, dazed, confused, not knowing what to do. Sitting there by the galley, they got an eye on him. They called ahead to Miami, got him wheelchair service because there was no way he was going to get past American immigration, not speaking a lick of English, and it was just so irresponsible of whoever did this. But look, what I was trying to say is British Airways handled that situation so perfectly, both situations. And you know what they did? They ended up giving me a free, full, complimentary from first class bottle of wine, big one from the bar they had upstairs, to take home. And they said, thank you very much for helping us. Sorry about that. I said, no, it's okay. You know, I understand, you know, people, I worked in a nursing home when I was in high school. So, you know, it's like God put me there for a reason. So what I'm trying to say is British Airways is fantastic. And I'm definitely going to be flying the national airline of my home country again, especially if they keep those A380s. Hopefully next time I can get in the upper deck. But I just wanted to tell you guys, British Airways is the most wonderful company to fly with. And if there's a problem, they sort it right away in proper English fashion. It's so good to be back home in Florida, but it was really, really great visiting home in England. thank you, British Airways. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and keep flying those A380s and bring the Concorde back.